Good afternoon. Welcome to the Wednesday afternoon conference call with Trusts Unlimited. This is Jim George speaking. I'm the non-attorney spokesman and facilitator for Trusts Unlimited, and I'd like to thank all of you for taking the time to listen to this call. Today is February 12th, 2025. There's a lot going on, and I've got a lot of information coming from a lot of different places, so I'm going to try to collate it a little bit and try to get to the bottom line of things. Although there's a lot of things going on geopolitically, there's a lot of historical events taking place going back literally centuries, and the current political climate in this country says that we're kind of at a crossroad here, and this country is going to take a direction in one way or the other. But those of us that hold the Iraqi dinar and some of the other currencies, frankly, have positioned themselves very well, irrespective of the direction that this country is going to go. Although I have my opinions about that, and I'm actually feeling very optimistic about the future of this country. But let's go ahead and get into what the information we have for today. Of course, things continue to move in Iraq. Things always seem to move a little slower than we'd like. I've said in the past, the 20-year history of Iraq, for those of us that have been involved with the dinar, and some people have been involved for that long, it's the same old, 2 steps forward, 1 step back. We're in a situation now where there is a little bit of a currency glut, and the CBI of Iraq wants to collect as much of the 3-0 currency as possible. Then they have some issues with the cross-border payments. Fortunately, the budget and the HCL are on the cusp. Of course, the HCL, it has to do with the equitable distribution of oil revenues to the citizens. And then Article 12 of the budget, which is very important, which has to do with the final unification and decentralization of government in Iraq, meaning they're going to basically evolve into what we would recognize as a republic. But I want to step back and go into a little history here to try to explain why we find ourselves where we do right now, not just in terms of those of us that have dinar, but how we found ourselves with this opportunity. We have to go all the way back to 1913 with the establishment of the Federal Reserve. Now, the Federal Reserve is not a federal, and it's not a reserve. It's a private corporation that literally creates currency out of nothing, and we as American citizens have to pay interest on that currency, meaning that when we purchase goods and services, we do so not just at the price of the good and service, but we have to pay interest on the money we use to purchase that good and service. And that's why, unfortunately, inflation has made it very difficult for many people to survive. I'll give you an example. When the Federal Reserve was created in 1913, what you could purchase in terms of goods and services for $100 was the exact amount of goods and services you could purchase in 1813 for $100. What this means is that for 100 years, we had no inflation or increase in purchasing power. The U.S. dollar was strong and continued to have the equivalent purchasing power. Now let's fast forward to 2013. 100 years after the creation of the Federal Reserve. To purchase those same goods and services for $100 that you could purchase in 1813 and 1913 costed you in 2013 $2,150. That's an increase of 2,000% inflation. And that's not the worst of it, because courtesy of the Biden administration, inflation really got out of control, probably higher over that 4-year cycle than perhaps anything that's happened since the 70s. But Donald Trump came into office and things began to change, and we will be getting into that. But I want to just mention that the United States, the Constitution of the United States, the founders of this country leaned very heavily on the period of the French Enlightenment. And one of the French Enlightenment writers was a gentleman by the name of Voltaire, very prophetic man. I'm just going to relate two statements that he made going back, 200 years. He said that fiat money, that is money that's not backed, based solely on the full faith and credit of a given government, fiat money inevitably will return to its intrinsic value of zero. Meaning that over the years, as the government prints more and more money, that the money's not backed by anything, it loses its purchasing power. And, of course, that's exactly what we've experienced. The other thing he said relates to what's going on in this country literally today and with the re-election of Donald Trump. He said, it's dangerous to be right in matters where the established authority is wrong. And, of course, that's exactly what's happening here. We have a president coming in that's going to fix things that have been broken for some time. And there's substantial pushback. As a matter of fact, there's a hearing going on in the House right now on DOGE, and it couldn't be more stark, the difference between the Republicans and the Democrats. One side wants to acknowledge the problem and fix it. The other side just wants to slander and trash the Republicans. So this is where we find ourselves. I don't know that that's going to change anytime soon, so that's where we are. But we're here today to talk about the Iraqi dinar and why it is likely that those of us that hold the dinar are going to enjoy a windfall return. And it's understandable why people would say, how could you invest? Let's take, for example, $1 million dinar. Because the dinar, when it went into a program rate, was at $3.22. But let's just say the dinar revalues for $1. It's understandable why someone would say, how can you invest $1,000 to purchase 1 million dinar, go to the bank and exchange it, and walk out of the bank with $1 million? How's that possible? Well, I'll tell you how that's possible. We have to go back a few years, though. 1971, the United States went off the gold standard. In other words, instead of have currency that was backed by gold and other commodities, it was backed merely on the full faith and credit of the United States. Now, why was that done? Basically, it was done because if your currency is backed by gold or some other commodity, it limits the amount of currency that you can produce. But if you go off the gold standard, if you eliminate a currency being backed by anything, gold, silver, platinum, oil, timber, all of that, if you just eliminate that and you just say the money's good because the government says so, they can print as much money as they want. And that's exactly what's happened since 1971. And that's why we have $36 trillion in debt. But something else happened. When the United States went off the gold standard, we have to remember that the U.S. dollar was the number one reserve currency for the countries around the world. So, going off the gold standard and printing more money, irrespective of how it would affect the markets, created inflation. And that created inflation globally. So the world, after a few years, decided that they had to course correct. So they came up with something called Basel compliance. What's that? Basel in Switzerland, where the Bank of International Settlements was, decided that we're going to tiptoe back to sound money, meaning currencies that were backed by something other than the quote-unquote full faith and credit of a given government. And it was a 5-phase program. So over a period of time, each of the phases would come by, and at the end, when we get to phase 5, we're back to currencies being backed. This does two things. Number one, it eliminates long-term inflation, And number two, it eliminates countries like China that intentionally devalue their currency in order to corner the trade market. But something else happened from the perspective of those of us that have currencies. In 1991, Saddam Hussein invaded Kuwait. Within a matter of certainly under 2 years, about 18 months, the United States and Allied forces removed Saddam Hussein from Kuwait and sanctioned Iraq by placing their currency in a program rate, meaning their currency globally was basically worthless. So they could live amongst themselves within their borders, but they lost any power globally because they did not have a currency that was worth anything. Then in mid-1990s, people such as ourselves began to invest in the Iraqi dinar on the theory that at some point it would have to revalue or at least increase substantially in value. So as time went on, as Iraq slowly and tediously began to resurrect itself from the ashes after the fall of Saddam Hussein, we've marched through the Basel compliance. We're currently in Basel IV compliance. This means that you and I went out and we purchased Iraqi dinar, and for simplicity's sake, let's say we paid $1,000 per million. Well, currency specialists that I know say based on the value of currencies and surrounding companies and their known natural resources, and that's what Basel's based on, the known natural resources of a country and their ability to bring those resources to market, they're saying that they believe the Iraqi dinar should be worth about $4.85. But I'll just go back to $1. If we purchased the Iraqi dinar in 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, we paid roughly $1,000 for that million dinar. And if it comes back at $1, we'll get $1 million. If it comes back at $4.85, that would be 4.85. I tend to say, let's just go back to where they were, $3.22, let's say $3. A $1,000 investment should result in a gross profit of $3 million. This is why this is possible. Because we purchased the currency at a time when the dinar was worthless, and we will exchange the currency for our own national currency at a time when Iraq is doing incredibly well. Now, the next question is, well, how can Iraq have a currency worth $1 and then be worth, let's say, $5? How is that possible? Well, as I've said on many calls, if you actually study the nation-state of Iraq, Iraq per square mile might be the richest country in the world. And what's Basel compliance? The value of a currency based on their known natural resources and their ability to bring those resources to market. Now, Iraq is situated in the Tigris-Euphrates River Delta. That means that all of the silt travels down from the Caucasus mountain range into this river delta. The result, after thousands of years, is that Iraq is very rich in both precious and industrial metals and rare earth metals. Iraq also has the cleanest crude oil in the world, meaning that it has the lowest sulfur content. Because Iraqi crude has such low sulfur content, it is much more easily refined. Therefore, other countries demand a crude oil that is clean. But Iraq also, in addition to having crude oil with the lowest sulfur content, also is rich in sulfur reserves. Why is that important? Sulfur is what's necessary for the production of sulfuric acid. Sulfuric acid is necessary literally for hundreds of industrial applications. So Iraq has it coming and going. Therefore, Iraq's known natural resources and ability to bring those resources to market reflects its actual Basel compliant value. That's where we make the money. So Iraq lost its value geopolitically, but has regained its value in terms of its Basel-compliant resources. In addition, geographically, Iraq is basically the gateway between the East and the West. So that means that countries in the Middle East, Europe, China, Russia, the United States, they're all interested in a country that's a gateway for trade and all manner of financial activities. Now, the final piece of the puzzle, which is not only to assess realistically what the value of the Iraqi dinar would be when we go to the bank to exchange, is how we're going to push through and actually have the dinar, the Iraqi dinar, reinstitute in country and revalue globally. And in my humble opinion, Donald Trump is the last piece of the puzzle. Donald Trump continues to talk about the new golden age, but he's talking about several things there. He tends to say things in a kind of an innocuous fashion. I'll give you another example. The Federal Reserve was the third central bank in the United States. There were two previous Federal Reserves, both of which ended, and we went back to sound money because of Andrew Jackson. The first Central Bank of London was ended in the War of 1812 thanks to the Battle of New Orleans, which, of course, Andrew Jackson had won. We established that bank again, and then President Andrew Jackson ended the second central bank when he was president, and there wasn't a third until 1913. But this is why Donald Trump walked into the White House when he was elected with a bust of Andrew Jackson. Basically, he was letting everyone know that he was going to end the Federal Reserve. And understanding that would explain why he was impeached twice and all of the other issues. It's interesting, too. Every president of the United States that was either assassinated or survived an attempted assassination attempt either ended or attempted to end the Federal Reserve Bank. Now, of course, Donald Trump made it clear what his intentions were, and, of course, there was an assassination attempt. There's actually two of them. The last president that suffered such an attempt was JFK, John F. Kennedy. Unfortunately, that attack was successful. But you need to know a little bit about what may have been going on there. Now, I'm going to connect the historic dots. I'll let you decide for yourself how relevant they are. But about a week before John F. Kennedy was assassinated, he had a very acrimonious phone call with the then mayor of Baltimore. His name was Thomas D'Alessandro. And he was a Democrat. He's actually someone that they were considering might run for president. He was a Democrat. And he, along with a number of Democrats at the time, had a problem with Kennedy's discussions about ending the Federal Reserve. Now, Thomas D'Alessandro had two children, a son and a daughter. The son also became the mayor of Baltimore. Now, his daughter got very involved in politics. Actually, I would argue she's the most famous person. But his daughter, Nancy, moved to California, married a very wealthy man. This man financed her campaign. She became a representative for California and eventually became Speaker of the House. Her married name was Nancy Pelosi. And what did Nancy Pelosi do? Impeach Donald Trump twice. So if you do your history, do your homework, and connect the dots, you can see this stuff's all related. So now we come to the elections, the last couple cycles. In 2020, of course, Donald Trump lost the election. He claimed that the election was rigged. And if you look closely at what happened then and what's going on now, in 2020, he lost the swing states. And in those swing states, because of the the COVID, they had mail-in ballots. In 2024, of course, there was no COVID. There were no mail-in ballots. And the 7 swing states that he lost, he won all of them. So facts are pesky things. It is hard for anyone to explain how that happened, but nevertheless it did. So Donald Trump was elected. He won the popular vote. He won by an electoral landslide. So he also brings with him the House and the Senate, which means he has a mandate. And he's been very, very busy since he got into the Oval Office. He's been there, 3 weeks? What's he done? He's gotten 10 hostages returned. He's ending trans athletes collegiately. He's got both Mexico and Canada sending troops to close their borders. He's repatriating all of the criminal illegals back to their countries like Colombia. He managed to convince Panama to expel China that was trying to take over the Panama Canal. He brokered a ceasefire between Israel and Lebanon. He took out a leader of ISIS in Somalia. And he created something called Doge to cut, ultimately, trillions of dollars out of the federal budget. And as I said before, we have a congressional fight, basically, on the House floor right now over this issue. Now, Donald Trump says some other things, too. He keeps talking about a return to a golden age. And he always talks in these sort of kind of like riddles. But as I've mentioned before, there was what was considered a golden age in America, roughly between 1880 and 1910, where the United States really grew in terms of the nation and citizens individually very, very wealthy. And it was during that period of time that there was no central bank and there was no Federal Reserve. And then, of course, when the Federal Reserve was instituted, we became enslaved to that system. But the other thing he's been doing is he says he wants an equilibrium on the valuation of currencies globally, so that countries like China can't devalue their currency to corner the trade market. What he's talking about is Basel compliance, and particularly with Iraq. Now, as you will recall recently, it may have been this week, he had a meeting in the Oval Office with the King of Jordan, Abdullah bin al-Hussein. And Abdullah al-Hussein is going to be working with President Trump to do a number of things. One of the things is Jordan is going to be a counterbalance along with Saudi Arabia to Iran. Another thing Jordan is going to help to do is to facilitate moving Palestinians out of Gaza to other Mideastern nations. Not all of them, but just dispersing the huge population, overpopulation. And whenever you have a situation of overpopulation, it agitates people understandably. But Donald Trump and the King Abdullah of Jordan are the two leaders of countries that are working with the CBI in Iraq today as we speak. So all of these stars are aligning here. All of the players are moving into the right direction. Yes, there are still some issues. There's still some I's that need to be dotted, some T's that need to be crossed. But we're at the point of no return. It's just a matter of time. Donald Trump's been in office for 3 weeks. We have him for nearly another 4 years. He's going to make this happen. I gave you just a pecking list of what he's done in 3 weeks. That's more than the previous administration did in 4 years. Even if they had wanted to do these things, they just couldn't have done it. So we have the right people in place. We have the right people in place in Iraq. We have the correct, or a number of correct players in the Middle East that want to get this done. We certainly have the right people in Washington, D.C. right now. And this is why this thing's going to happen. I think in a matter of weeks, perhaps even longer than a month, but It's going to happen. It has to happen because Iraq is in a situation now where if it doesn't happen, they're a failed state. They've conducted themselves in such a way as their only solution, the only conclusion to all of this has to be the reinstatement and revaluation of their currency globally. Now, very briefly, I'm going to just touch on our trust. I know I spend most of the time talking about this politics, but because it's an integral part of what's going on. But I want to touch very briefly on the trust package. Those of us that have currencies or anyone that has an asset that they think is going to appreciate substantially in the near future needs to get the asset out of title and into trust. I'm going to briefly touch on the reasons why you'd want to establish this trust if you're in a situation like that, but particularly if you hold the Iraqi dinar. And the Iraqi dinar very well might be the catalyst for some of these other currencies that individuals hold to reinstitute as well. But by establishing this trust, you're going to protect your privacy and your anonymity. It's going to make it extremely difficult, if not impossible, for anyone to successfully sue you. And frivolous lawsuits are out the window. It's impossible. The trust will allow you to avoid IRS scrutiny because by establishing the trust, you will avoid the possibility of an audit because the trust audit would necessarily be confined to the revaluation itself. They're not going to audit you, the activities going on in the trust. And the only thing that happened was the revaluation, and that's very easy to explain. The third reason you'd want to establish the trust is because it's going to allow you to avoid gift taxes with pre-RV gifting. By gifting currencies to friends and family through your trust, you will not only avoid the federal gift tax, but the trust will allow you to control the post-RV proceeds if you decide to do so. The trust will also allow you to avoid the cost and delay of probate and the federal estate tax. You'll bypass the cost and delay of probate, and the inheritance that your people will receive will be theirs without having to go through probate because they will receive it through the trust. In addition, by having the assets in trust, you will avoid the federal estate tax. The federal estate tax is the tax that is assessed on the transfer of an asset upon a person's death. But when an individual passes away and their assets are in trust, the trust still exists. So the assets are then available to the heirs. The federal estate tax can be as much as 55% of the estate in excess of $12 million. However, those assets are in our trust. There is no federal estate tax, meaning your heirs will receive 100 cents on a dollar. And lastly, there is preemptive litigation protection. By placing your pre-RV assets in trust, you personally can only be sued for the value at the time of the transfer, not the subsequent value post-RV. Secondarily, after you've acquired this wealth, by isolating each individual asset in a subtrust, you limit any potential litigation to the asset that's involved. So the trust package, as I've said in the past, works very much the way a commercial barge would work, where all of the valuable cargo is stored in a series of small compartments, limiting any loss to whatever's in a compartment that might potentially be breached. Now, you can contact us by email or phone if you'd like to get our initial trust package. Our trust package was originally designed for some of our more wealthy clients. It had a cost of about $10,000. When we decided to mass market it to Dinarians, it has a price tag of $2,500. If you're a Dinarian and you have even $1 million dinar or more, you're looking at a substantial amount of wealth overnight. And you can completely eliminate the possibility of a lawsuit by simply transferring the asset on paper to the trust. The information you need to request our trust, again, is either by email or phone. Our email address is trusts with an S, unlimited LLC at gmail.com. That's trusts with an S, unlimited LLC at gmail.com. And our phone service is 307-274-4122. That's 307-274-4122. 274-4122. I'm going to go to a Q&A in a moment, but one thing I forgot to mention, because we find ourselves in the situation we're in, we've really been slammed with requests for trusts, and even some of our existing clients want to make last-minute changes, so we're a little backed up. I apologize for that. My voice is just about gone, but I will be on the phone right after this call, and I will stay on the phone as long as it takes to contact everyone. If I can answer your question by email or text, I will do that, but if it's something that requires a conversation, you will hear from me. I haven't forgotten about you. You know, we're just being, as I said, we're being slammed at this time. So I will go ahead and open the Q&A. And while I'm waiting for any potential questions, again, you can get our initial trust package by email or phone. The email address is trusts with an S, Unlimited LLC @gmail.com. And our phone service is 307-274-4122. We have a couple people in the queue here. Our first caller is area code 443. That's 443. Go ahead.
Hi, Jim. Can you hear me?
Yes, I sure can, Gina.
Hi. Yep, this is Gina from Maryland.
Yes.
I've been going through my documents, and I see that I have there's a document that's called like units
of capital interest.
I don't have that document executed at this point. Is that an after the fact?
It's not an important document at all. Write down your number. I'm going to call you back just a sec. Where is your? Oh, there you are. I'll give you a quick call. It's not really an important.
That'd be great.
It's a summary document. It's not really important. We'll discuss it in a little bit more detail. Okay.
Okay, great. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Sure. Okay. Bye now. Okay, our next caller is area code. Oh boy, this thing keeps clicking. Let's see. That's 301. That's 301. Go ahead.
Hey, John. This is Wanda.
Hi, Wanda. How are you?
You just sent me an email, but my detailed question is, are we typing these things into the PRV, post RV and gifting, like the typing in those persons' names so that it would already be in there? Is that the way we're doing it?
Well, if you are gifting currencies to family and friends through the gift subtrust, there is a form that you should have, and you just fill in the names in the appropriate spot. So I'm going to write your number down, and I'm going to call you, get your email, and I will send you the document that you need in order to.
I have all the documents, but I just wanted to know whether we write it down or type it in.
You can write it or type it, but if you write it in, what you want to do in the margin when you get a chance is you and the trustee just initial in the margin that you wrote it in, and you both understand that, and that's all that's. There are times where you have to write it in, and whatever you do, as long as you and your trustee just initial it in the margin, it's not a problem.
Okay. That's all
right.
I need to know. Thank you so much.
Certainly.
And when you say an asset, are you speaking of like your home or your cars that you own now, you have now?
Any physical asset that you decide you want to put in the trust. I don't know why you wouldn't put all of them in, but there are situations like co-ownerships, certain indebtedness. There are times when you may not want to put something in the trust, but each of the sub-trusts is to hold a physical asset like a home, a car, a boat, etc. I have a sub-trust for a guitar collection, so, because there's some valuable stuff there. So, there's different reasons to set them up, but they're basically for a physical asset or a class of physical assets, like I said, like a guitar collection.
Okay. Thank you.
Certainly.
I have clarification now. Thanks.
Okay, sure. Bye-bye now. Our next caller is area code 785. That's 785. Go ahead.
Hey, Jim. I was on the audits and stuff that's going on. It's got me thinking a lot about all the waste and fraud money that's been wasted, our tax dollars. And is there enough tax collected every year to fund our government and have a balanced budget based on taxes only?
Based on today, absolutely not. That's what the whole Doge thing is about. I'll give you one example. Just the interest on our national debt exceeds the cost of our military, of our entire defense. So I think, as a matter of fact, it's my personal opinion that that's the real problem they have with Trump. People in Washington, when he walked into the Oval Office with that bust of Andrew Jackson, he was basically letting them know that this has all got to stop. The Federal Reserve, as far as I'm concerned, is a laundering mechanism. This is my opinion, but he wants to. I think what's going to happen. He started right now with saying what we're spending money on. I think what's coming is an audit of the Federal Reserve, and that is going to scare a lot of Democrats and Republicans and independents and a lot of individuals in Washington that are, leeches to this whole system. So the next couple of years are going to be very interesting because Trump can't get this done without the House and the Senate, which means he's got to get this done in a hurry so that the American people understand what needs to be done. So the next couple of years can be very interesting.
Yeah, that's how I think about it too. He's got to move fast, but I was just thinking you're talking about the millions and billions of dollars that they're finding just in the USAID only. At some point, you would think that there would be enough tax base if you cut out all the waste and fraud to really go a long ways to a balanced budget. And setting that aside, the budget itself, you still have the $36 trillion in debt, and he would have to pay that off somehow. In order
Why? Why would he have to pay it off? Wait a minute. Why would he have to pay it off? If they do an audit of the budget and they find out that they've been involved in some nefarious activities, we don't have to pay that money back.
Well, that was my initial question I was leading up to, and I was hoping you could. Okay, the Federal Reserve, we know it's not federal. Okay, it's not got nothing to do with the government. It's just a bunch of rich bankers. Okay, they create money out of nothing. Their purpose was to loan money to our government, to fund the government. All right, if that was their sole purpose, my main question is this: what would an audit, which to me is dangerous based on what's happened to the other presidents who tried, but what would an audit, other than the fact that they loan money to us and we're supposed to pay it back in interest, what would it expose, do you think, the Federal Reserve, an audit on the Federal Reserve? What would it expose?
Probably would expose financing wars to cover up other crimes, probably would expose the fact that the Federal Reserve lends the federal government the money then goes out to other countries, then the leaders of those countries either don't use the money for their own people or the money flows back to the politicians through their global trusts and their nonprofits. The best example might be the Clinton initiative, that fund. It was audited, when Bill Clinton left office, he and his wife had a net worth of about $850,000. They're now worth about $240 million. They haven't done a damn thing. Where'd they get that money? They did it from the Clinton initiative, setting up that trust. Now, that trust was audited in 2014, and this is legal, by the way. They didn't really break any laws. 96% of the money earned on the corpus in that trust goes to the Clintons, and the people that they hire supposedly with the trust, like daughter, family, and friends, only about 6% of the money goes to the Clinton, to the charity. So, it's all a scam. It's all money laundering. It's been going on for decades. Both parties are involved in it. And Donald Trump's an existential threat to all of that.
And I think that is basically, it's just another extension of the U.S. aid. It's the same thing they were doing in U.S. aid, only probably on a grander scale. And to me, everything that he looks at is they're going to find so much money wasted. American people are not going to believe it. And I've been watching this as you have. And one good thing is I thought, their playbook for the Democrats is to go to the courts. And I was just listening to Fox here. One of the judges has said they're able to go ahead and look into. They didn't go against Trump; they went for him to look into the fraud. And,
it's going to end up that way through appeal. I mean, there are what? It's the district courts. There's about 500 district courts in the country. There are, I don't know exactly the number, 10, 12 appellate courts and the Supreme Court. At some point, the court's going to say, well, of course, the President of the United States, leaders of the executive branch, has every right to audit monies being spent. The House keeps saying, well, we decide how you can, how much money you can spend, and his response is, okay, you want it, yeah, but I can also audit where that money's going to make sure it's doing its intended purpose. So, it's not an argument they're going to win. The mere fact that they're out there in the streets screaming and yelling obscenities and making threats tells you right now that, Trump's audits are not to their liking. So it is what it is. I mean, how can you argue with an audit? If you had a business with three partners well, we have three branches.
Unless they got something to hide, let them audit it.
Of course. That's what I'm saying. You're breaking up there, but I'll move on to the next caller. But basically, the question is, why would someone be upset with an audit unless they have something to hide?
Exactly. Thank you, Jim.
Certainly. You take care now. Bye-bye. Okay, our next caller is area code 479. That's 479. Go ahead. 479, are you there? Going once, going twice. 479. Well, I guess you're not there. Okay, our next caller here is area code 615. That's 615. Go ahead.
Hi, Jim. This question kind of goes back into the history a little bit. It's kind of not. There was an old advertisement years ago that said it's not what you make, it's what you keep. And my question is, how did they tax the profits on when Kuwaiti dinar revalued?
Ordinary income.
Ordinary income? Was it capital gains? Was it some other
ordinary
variation?
Income. It was ordinary income.
Is that what you expect to see happen here?
Oh, absolutely. An argument can be made for cap gain if you've held the currencies for over a year, but the argument is a currency a physical asset like a home, something like that, or is it a financial asset like interest? And I wouldn't be surprised if the Trump administration directed the IRS to call it cap gain, and the spendaholics in Washington file suit because they think it should be ordinary income. So when I say ordinary income, I'm hoping it's cap gain, but I'm presenting the worst scenario. So I've had people say, well, gee, if I'd have known that, I'd have bought more currency. I say, well, then buy more currency. Assume the worst. Assume you're going to get $1 for it, and it's going to be ordinary income. And work backwards from there.
Agreed. Okay, thank you.
Certainly. Bye-bye now. Okay, our next caller is area code 785. That's 785. Go ahead.
Jim, that was me already. It must have put me back.
I'm sorry.
But I don't know. You bet.
Yeah, the people keep coming in and coming out, and so that happens to me. I apologize. See ya. Let's see if I get this right. Our next caller is area code 973. That's 973. Go ahead.
Hey, Jim. It's Kevin. How are you?
Okay, Kevin. How you doing?
I'm doing well. So I have a couple questions. So in light of, I've just kind of been thinking about and watching the news. The budget schedules are supposed to be released or sent to Parliamentary Finance Committee by the end of this week. I think on Monday they said within the next few days. Then a report came out today from Jamal Cougar on the Parliamentary Finance Committee that they're expecting it next week because they needed to put in the Article 12, paragraph 2C that was passed on February 2nd. So
correct.
My understanding is the rate needs to change before that because the trillions that would normally be in the budget will then go down to billions. And if they send it over without changing the rate, then change it after, everything now gets thrown off and is not accurate. Is that your understanding as well?
That's my understanding, too. And the reason I didn't mention that is because they could screw that up. So that's why I said it could be weeks. There's actually, that's one of several things that could be a fly in the ointment. But you're right. They need the rate.
Yeah. So, I mean, I agree they obviously human error is a thing, but based upon the pressure, right? I literally saw a Shafak News article yesterday talking about Iraq looking to evade the Trump crisis. For anybody who's following Iranian news, Iran is basically about to collapse. The mullahs are on the run. People are protesting. Their grip of Iran on Iraq is fading by the second, and Hamas has a deadline for Saturday at noon. And then I also saw the Civil Status Authority is suspending national card transactions starting tomorrow until Sunday. So there's too many things. There are too many things going on. There's the lawsuit with Sadani. What are your thoughts about all these different things?
All of this points in the same direction. I said they're behind the scenes. They're dotting I's and crossing T's. They're putting the right people on notice. The white hats are doing what they have to do. The black hats are on notice. And Trump is the only guy that could do this. God forbid, if Kamala Harris is in the White House, we wouldn't be having these conversations at all.
Correct, yeah. So, I mean, obviously, not to make you sound like a guru, right, as far as rate or date or anything like that. And my last question will be about the lawsuit, but in relation to just based upon what we can see, if they do send those schedules by next week, we'd have to see the rate prior to that. And the reason why I don't think they'll mess it up is because of the pressure from Trump and also even just global macroeconomically, the price of oil, right? They've clearly talked about on the Iraqi news that if it gets to a 65 per barrel, they're screwed.
That's another point I didn't mention. However, remember this, that Iraq already has international contracts to rebuild their infrastructure based on a payment schedule which has a rate in it, and also a lot of countries have already executed currency swaps with Iraq. Well, they didn't do a currency swap at 13.10, so they are working with a number. We just don't know what it is.
Yes, and you broke up a bit earlier. Did you mention 485 as what is expected for the rate, as far as just based upon fundamentals?
Based upon fundamentals, it might even be higher. That rate was based on advice that I got from currency speculators that I work with. That's the extrapolated rate. They based it on the value of the Kuwaiti dinar, and they did an extrapolation and said, based on the value of the Kuwaiti dinar, we estimate that the Iraqi dinar should be around 485. That doesn't mean it'll end there. It might be higher, it might be lower, but if they just had to pick a number, they said based on the math, 485 is the number they thought it would be, which would make it the most valuable currency against the U.S. dollar in the world.
Which is what we've heard. That's exactly what they would like to do, right?
Yeah.
And then lastly, the lawsuit with Rashid versus Sudani and Taif Sami, what do you make of that, right? Because right before your call, from what I've heard, Baghdad said they weren't going to send the salaries until Kurdistan shared the non-oil revenues. Well, Kurdistan in the last hour sent over those non-oil revenues. So
yes,
what do you make of that lawsuit? Yeah, and everything.
They're just a plot. They just want it done. They're just trying to grease the skids and say, look, bad things are going to happen if you don't pull the trigger. This is taking too long. Remember, Sudani said that the citizens would enjoy purchasing power this year. Now, he said that in the spring of last year. But the question is he talking calendar year or fiscal year? The fiscal year begins and ends on April 1st. So that's another indication that, he could theoretically be talking fiscal year, and if it happens now, then he's kept his word.
Right. So, I mean, in light of that, just the pressure, the fact that those non-oil revenues have been sent, obviously, strictly in your opinion, I know you said weeks, but just looking at the facts, where would you say that you think we are? If the facts are actually what they're saying, yeah.
I'm thinking this will be done by April 1st.
You're funny. I know what you really want to say. Okay.
Stop it.
Yes. Well, I appreciate it, Jim. Thank you.
Sure. Okay. Take
All
care.
Right.
Bye-bye.
Take care. All right. Bye-bye.
Let's see. Who haven't we spoken to here? Let's see. My goodness, these calls keep. Oh my God, who are all these people? All right, let me try this one. Another area code 301. That's 301 Silver Spring, Maryland. Go ahead.
Hi, Jim. It's Larry from Maryland. This is a bit of maybe a superfluous question, but how is it that with everything that we all know about everything, that this is like the best kept secret in the entire world? When with the Iraqi dinar?
Well, I mean, you say it's the best kept secret in the world, but there are 40 million Americans, and only 12 to 15 million have dinar. So, if it's the best kept secret,
I mean, as far as I meant as far as the questions that were just being asked, like that the information about the rate change and whatnot is not kind of already out there and understood.
Well, part of it has to do with the fact that Iraq's form, it's a republic, but it's very complicated the way that they've done it, and they have the influence of Iran. They have the Iranian officials in there that don't want it to happen. The Middle East is a mess, and it is confusing. And we're talking about also an investment where a person could theoretically invest $1,000 for $1 million dinar, and if it comes back at 322, which is where it was, they're looking at $3.25 million on $1,000 investment. People just walk away and say, "Well, yeah, that's nuts," and they just don't. So people don't know.
So it's just too many variables that no one has any control over.
That's right. But I will say this: a lot of those variables have been eradicated by the Trump administration. They know who he is. They know that he means what he says. They know when he makes a promise, he's going to keep a promise, and when he says something's going to happen, it happens. So that is key. That is key.
It's just making sure it all plays out and just waiting patiently. That's it. Right?
Well, the people that are going to be crying are the ones that don't have dinar, in my opinion, because when this thing happens, and they're going to wonder. Actually, the worst case scenario are people that purchase currencies and the rest of their family laughs at them and wags their finger at them and tells them they're nuts, and they're going to hope that they got gifted some currency.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Certainly. Okay. Bye-bye now. Okay, our next call is area code 856. That's 856. Go ahead.
Good afternoon, Jim. How are you, sir?
Okay, how are you?
Good. This is Mark from New Jersey. It's been a while since I talked to you. May has even been a couple of years.
Well, I'm still here, but hopefully we'll all be on our way soon.
I believe that. I love your I'm always able to get in on a recorded call. Jim, I'm going to be real brief. The gentleman before the last gentleman was very well spoken, and he answered a lot of my questions that I had. As far as Iraq, Jim, I think that they are very caught off guard, very surprised that President Trump got reelected. My point was, I was telling my wife, I said, if this revaluation happens, I don't feel like it will happen under the regime of Kamala Harris. Not that I disliked her or anything. I thought she was an intelligent woman, but I wanted Trump to come in office for this reason, because I believe his aggressiveness caught Iraq off guard. I didn't think they would ever see him again, and I think it caught them off guard. And I think he's going to kind of put their feet to the fire with this. They seem to get very complacent. Them, Iran, I'm going to say a few of those Middle Eastern countries. Jim, my question to you is, when he places tariffs on a country, or anything for that matter, where I work at, we get a lot of products from China. And right now the owner, he's a little up in arms about cost is going up, because he gets a lot of imports from China. Do you feel as though with him putting tariffs on these countries, do you think he might implement this on Iraq, and that would possibly put pressure on them to raise the value of their currency?
I don't think. Well, we could get into a whole discussion of tariffs, but I'll sidestep that. I don't think he's prepared to do that. I don't think he's prepared to do that now, but I think it's going to be on the table if the Iranians have undue influence and in any way try to stop this. Now, you mentioned what would happen if Kamala Harris had got elected. If you remember, Shabibi was in a position way back, 10 years ago, that they were in a position to move forward with the reinstitution of the Iraqi dinar in country, and Obama stopped it. And I postulated at the time that the reason Obama stopped it was because he didn't need 10 or 15 million Americans being enriched overnight who were not going to vote for bigger government and higher taxes. And also, he just thought that would be a loss of control to have these. He doesn't know who these people are and what their politics were and all of that. Now, Kamala Harris is, of course, an acolyte of Obama. As a matter of fact, I think it was Obama that kind of resurrected her politically from the dead. And so when she lost, I was kind of happy, because it was not only her losing, it was Obama losing. And then they showed later at the funeral, Obama was sitting right next to Trump, and they were talking. Everyone else was looking straight ahead. They looked like they were all sitting on a tack, and Obama is having this conversation with Trump. It's like two guys that don't like each other, know they don't like each other. They're at a funeral. They're having a conversation, So it's it was a testosterone thing, but it just made me laugh, because Trump's the winner there, and Trump's just he's a bull in the china shop. He's just, anything that's in the way, just breaks it. He has an objective, and one of them is going to be the reinstitution of the Iraqi dinar. And one of the reasons is, of course, because we hold trillions of Iraqi dinar as reserve currency, I just don't see how this thing can be stopped. I really don't. Mm-hmm. I mean, and even if anything happened to Trump, what's next? J.D. Vance, and then what's next after him? Mike Johnson. So they're all on the same page as Trump. So I just don't think this thing's it's going to happen. I think it's going to happen before April 1st. I hope it does anyway.
Nice. Jim, I have some questions I'd like to ask you later concerning the trust. I don't want to talk to you now about it. Okay. Would you be able to give me a call by any chance?
Yeah, hold on. What was your first name again? I'm sorry.
My first name is Mark.
Mark. Okay, Mark. I'm writing down your phone number. Okay. 136. I've got your number. If for some reason you don't hear from me, and I've got 3 people ahead of you, but I will call you. But if you get antsy, just call our line and, just say, hey, Jim, this is Mark from the call. Please give me a call when you get a chance. I'll get to you as soon as I can. Okay?
Okay, I appreciate it.
Certainly. Okay, Mark.
Good to hear your voice. Take care.
You too. Bye-bye. Let's see. Our next call is, area code 509. That's 509. Go ahead.
Well, hello, Jim. This is Art on the left coast.
Yes, sir.
How you doing today? Yeah, sounding great. It's great to have you have some Q&A.
Well, I do it when I can. Actually, my voice is just about gone. I've been on the phone for so long, but I figured I better do it. And of course, I'm going to be here till dinner now.
May not be right, but it's correct.
Yeah.
I got to digress back to the trust and specifically the gift subtrust. I haven't set up the gift subtrust. We've added individuals to that, and initially it was all on one page. It included the information that we signed, and then the notary signed, and then we had those few at that time individuals who were listed on the gift subtrust. We've had to add people.
Wait, let me stop you. Are you saying you have not established the gift subtrust? You just haven't filled it in. You mean you do have one, or you don't have one?
We have one, and we fill it in with the notary, but yet at the same time we've added individuals. And
that's fine. You can do that.
Okay, so what I've done is have an addendum, if you want to call it that.
That's all you need to do. That's all you need to do.
And so just have to go back.
As long, whether it's in the trust or whether it's a gift letter outside of the trust, as long as it says, I, Jim George, am going to give Joe Smith $1 million dinar, or, and it's notarized pre-RV, that's all you need. If you've got your list and it's notarized pre-RV, you should be fine. But you do need to create the gift subtrust. You need to send us an email, because I can't call the paralegals and ask them to do it. You need to send us an email and give us your name, the name of your master trust, and say, I'd like to create a gift subtrust called whatever it is, and it'll get done. But I wouldn't waste any time. I get that. If you really want to establish the gift subtrust, I would do it today.
Well, actually, we do have it. We have established it, and we have had the notary.
Okay, I misunderstood that. I thought you meant you notarized something you created.
No, it's the original gift subtrust. Created that, but we've added names to that, and so
as long as you initial that addendum, make sure that addendum is dated pre-RV, you're good to go.
Okay, pre-RV. That was the next question.
Yeah,
and
pre-RV.
Okay, fair enough. We'll get that done ASAP then, and just bring forward, and we'll put the circular file of the other document that we've had notarized. Have you heard? Change the subject real quick back to geopolitical. There's 7 NGOs that have been identified that have been a cash slush fund for the Uniparty.
I don't know why it is, but every Wednesday when I have my call is when all the fireworks are on in the Congress, and I have to turn the TV off because I'm listening to it, and I can't do a call with that in the background. But I think this is just the beginning. I think what's coming. I think the reason that they're screaming and hollering with obscenities and threats and all of that means they know what they've done and they know what's coming. And that's why I said the next year or two, but the next couple of months are going to be very, very enlightening. And this is probably why they knew they had to get rid of Trump, because he's not a Washingtonian. He's an outsider, and he's snooping around and looking in drawers and looking under the bed and finding all kinds of interesting things that have been going on. And it's not just Democrats, it's Republicans too. So,
right. And that's not even including the pedophilia that's gone on.
Well, let's not get into all that on these calls, okay?
Right.
I know.
Fair enough.
Yeah, that there's a lot going on, and we'll just have to, as Trump says, we'll just have to see how it works out. All right?
Right. All right, my friend.
Okay.
Thank you very kindly. You have a great day. Bye for now.
You too. Sure. Bye-bye. Okay, let's see who I've missed here. Goodness, come on, Jim. Let's try area code. I don't know why. The calls come in and out, and they're not sequential, so I'm running around trying to use my memory. I'm going to have to start writing down the area codes that I speak with. The next call is area code 810. That's 810. Go ahead.
Hi, Jim. I have a question in regards to the trust, but it was something that you said in regards to protecting our anonymity and everything like that. My question is this: with what's going on now with Doge and wanting to get our information and checking out, everything, how does that protect our trust?
Well, it doesn't matter whether it's a government agency or a private citizen. If you have assets in trust, in this type of a trust, the only way that trust can be pierced, again, by anybody, is if they can go to a court and show cause. In other words, establish that there's reasonable suspicion that you have defrauded somebody. So short that, they can't get the information. So as long as if you have our trust and you're behaving yourself, you're good to go.
Okay, yeah, because that was just a concern because, if they're getting, everybody's information and if it's, on lockdown and they might think there's something that, why can't I get into it? And so they may want to try to, go to the courts and try to contest that.
Well, first of all, unless there was some sort of litigation involved, people wouldn't even know you have a trust because you, as an individual, operate on a Social Security number. The trust operates on an EIN number. Since the only thing you've done is assign currencies to the trust, there is no activity in the trust at all, so they wouldn't even know that it exists. But again, let's say you go to the bank, you do your exchange, you have your USD, it goes into the trust bank account that will be established that day. You subsequently purchase other assets, and they're placed in the sub-trust. Again, that information is not available to anyone unless they can go to a court and show that you have somehow defrauded them.
Okay. That was my question on that. And again, I had a question, and I think it might have been answered before, but I just want to get some clarity on it. So when you put your money into the trust and you leave it in the bank like that, so if you have to is the bank able to I guess what they normally do, utilize your money and things of that nature? Would they still, if you're leaving it there and they're giving you an interest rate, a particular interest rate, a higher interest rate, will they have access to whatever amount that's left there?
Any monies that are in a bank, whether it's in trust or not, the bank uses as float. The reason I don't keep money in a bank is because, for me, a bank is there for convenience, period, and liquidity. So I have 10 million dinar. I get $1 for it. I now have $10 million in my bank account. I'd probably be shocked if I even left 100,000 in there. I'd have the rest of the money in investment accounts or in things that I was purchasing. I wouldn't be leaving it in the bank. Now, let's say
you say investment account, so
yeah, set up, whether you set up a Schwab account or you go to some other brokerage firm and the money's in that account. It's owned by the trust, but it's not in the bank. It's in some other account.
Okay. So when it's in these accounts like that, do they give you a particular interest rate that you're asking for, or is you're just investing?
The investments work the way they work. The only difference is instead of you owning the investment account, the trust owns the investment account, and you're the beneficiary of that account. So those situations are all going to be the same. That's all. The only difference is the trust will own it instead of you personally.
Okay. Now, are you all going to have classes or information?
Yes, we will be. Once the dinar hits the Forex, we'll stop marketing the trust. and we'll be discussing some of the other options you have post-RV. We're not an investment advisory firm, so we can give you very general information, and we can point you to where you can go, specifically. But I'll give you one example. Let's say you had 10 million dinar. You got $1 for it. Now you got $10 million, and you decide you want to leave $1 million to your church. So we would say, okay, we'll take that $1 million, we'll put it into something called a charitable remainder trust. That means you can deduct that from your taxable income because you're giving that money to charity. When you die, that $1 million will go to the church. But in addition, during your lifetime, all of the income generated from that $1 million is tax-free to you. So you take the money out of the trust, you deduct that so you don't have to pay taxes on it. It goes to your church when you pass away, and you get the tax-free income on that $1 million during your lifetime. So that's an example of the things we'll be discussing post-RV.
Okay, so you said that while you're living, it would be taxable. It would be tax-free
to you,
to me,
right.
And I would take it out. So a check would be written to me.
Well,
is that on a monthly basis or what?
Once you set up the charitable remainder trust, you'll decide how you want it paid out. You want it monthly? You want it quarterly? We'll discuss the specifics. The general proposition is there's a way you could get a deduction, leave a charitable gift upon your death, and get tax-free income during your life. If you're getting tax-free income, it means something else. It means you can take less risk because it's all net to you. It's tax-free. So, but again, these are all post-RV discussions.
Okay. Sounds good. All righty. Thank you so much, Ben, for giving me clarity on that. All right. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye-bye. Okay, our next caller is, who haven't I talked to here? Goodness. Gosh, I hope I'm not missing anyone. How about this? How about area code 405? That's 405.
Hello, Jim. This is Larry. Quick question. I hope you haven't covered it yet, but on a gifting subtrust, I printed the document out as far as having the paper to have it, have it stamped and
executed, right?
Yeah, executed. And now the list of the names that I have on that, it's not on the same document. It's on a separate piece of paper.
Yes,
that
part of the trust.
And so no. Is that good?
Yeah, that's fine. There's a separate gifting document that comes with that trust. And you just you'll list the names and how much of each currency on that.
Yeah, but does it have to be on the same document? That's what I was wondering because it's
on a separate page. It's a separate page within the trust. I know. I wrote that trust. I mean, it's a separate page that goes with that trust.
Okay. That's all I needed to know. Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir. All right. Bye-bye now.
All right. Bye-bye.
Okay, our next caller is area code 323. That's 323. Go ahead. Are you there, 323? 323 going once? Going twice? See ya. Okay, our next caller is area code, let's see. I don't know if, let's see, area code 561. That's 561. Go ahead.
Oh, hi, Jim. I've had your trust for a while, and we just want to make sure it was executed correctly. When you sent us in the trust, there was 2 spaces for 2 trustees. We backed out one of them because I believe you told us we only needed 1 trustee to start, and we notarized that. And then all the other things, all we needed was to notarize the protector. Are we correct in that assumption?
Now, in order for the trust, when it's fully funded, to operate correctly, in our view, you're going to need 2 trustees and a protector. However, the banks, the memorandum of trust specifically says you only need 1 trustee present in order to conduct any transaction. However, the idiots at the bank, I'm sorry for my language, but they're idiots. They don't know what they're talking about. They all said, we cannot proceed to do anything unless both trustees and the protector are present. So so we decided, okay, we're only going to name one trustee instead of two trustees and the protector. It's an unfunded trust. You're not doing anything anyway, and then we'll add a second trustee and a protector post-RV. So that's why it was done that way. It's unfortunate that we had this problem with the banks. We told people not to go to the banks pre-RV, but we're glad a couple did, because then we realized what a problem it was going to be for the banks. Either they can't read or they refuse to honor the terms of the trust. My view is, if I'm sitting there with $10 million dinar and they're giving me a lot of jazz about a second trustee, I'm just walking out. But that's me. But that's the situation. That's why we only recommend one trustee pre-RV.
Okay, so deleting out the other place for the second trustee is okay. Later on, we can add it back in.
Well, when you name a second trustee, we'll amend the trust. You'll get a new document. The old trust will be valid that you signed, but we'll amend it. What you'll want to do is add a second trustee and a protector. So, again, we had to do it that way because you want to name the person you want, and it might be, if you've got three people, two trustees and a protector, they might theoretically be in 3 states. So you got to drag 3 people from 3 different states. So this way, you should name one person, the most convenient person, to minimize, what's going on. And then post-RV, you can make that amendment.
Right. And last question, if we need to change the protector because someone's falling ill, what's the procedure for that?
Just send us an email and say, we want to remove or replace them. You don't even have to tell us why. If you want to replace the trustee or protector, just tell us, and we'll take care of it.
Okay, super. Thank you for all you do. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye now.
Bye-bye.
Okay, our next caller is area code 801. That's 801. Go ahead.
Jim, how are you? It's Clay Blackwell.
Clay, how are you?
I'm doing just fine, my friend. I want to confirm a couple of things. You said that the fiscal year for Iraq is April 1st, which means the year right now would end March 31st. And I think Kuwait revalued their currency during their fiscal year about the 24th of March in 91. Would that be accurate?
Yes, and that's why I'm saying when Sudani made the promise, people will have purchasing power this year, I'm saying he may have been referring to the fiscal year, not the calendar year.
Okay. Well, what I was getting at is you realize the new budget for 23, 24, and 25 is about to be validated. They're pretty much done everything they need to do, but what's interesting about it is it not only has an operational budget, but it also has an investment budget, which would require that the dinar be reinstated or revalued. Would you agree with that?
Yes, and I think they said it was April 1st, if I recall.
April 1st is when the new budget starts.
Right.
So if they don't eradicate the budget and get it going by, let's say, the 31st of March, would that push this out another year?
Wouldn't push it out a year, but it would create problems because they'd have to do some back math. That's why I said earlier in the call that I think this is going to happen before April 1st.
Okay, well, everything they're doing would indicate to me that the rate's already changed. They're just looking for a date to let everybody else know what it is.
Well, I think they've had a rate or a parameter of the rates for quite some time. As I've said, there's no way they can negotiate the contracts to rebuild their infrastructure or do the currency swaps at a 13.10 at a program rate. So there must be an undisclosed memorandum of understanding with regard to a rate. It's the only thing that makes sense. Or else I don't understand how a central bank in another country would do a currency swap with a currency at 13.10. Makes no sense.
Right. Do you think these sanctions that Trump is holding over Iraq's head about dealing with Iran for electricity and what have you will expedite the change in the rate, or how do you think that may affect this?
He's just putting pressure on him to pull the trigger. Trump's a guy never put off till tomorrow what I could have done 3 weeks ago. That's the kind of guy he was. I mean, he look what he's doing. He's just he every day he's in the Oval Office signing something with a visitor for something. I mean, he literally has done more in 3 weeks than Biden did in 4 years. Literally. I mean, that's frightening.
He's definitely testing the constitutionality of this country and the laws in place that in some cases have been backed up by the court system, but he does have the Supreme Court to his advantage. Last thing I want to ask you, when Kuwait revalued their currency, how much time did you have to move your money over?
Okay. This is the difference. In Kuwait, there was a time frame. I think it was 90 days, if I recall correctly. We had 90 days to do the exchange. And, years ago when we got involved with the Iraqi dinar, people were calling and they were concerned about that. And I said, I don't see it playing out that way because this is a little different situation in Kuwait. Kuwait was done Kuwait was invaded. They put the thing in a program rate so that Iraq couldn't take advantage of taking their currency. Then Iraq was expelled. Kuwait was back, and they said, okay, we got 90 days, and we're back in business. This thing with Iraq now is completely different than Kuwait. The country was cratered. So I think they're approaching it differently. However, we do have a time frame, and the time frame is this. We have to pay taxes on the gain. And according to Section 988E2 of the Internal Revenue Code, we have to pay taxes on the 15th day of the first month of the next quarter based on the value of the currency, even if we haven't exchanged it. So that's how so the time frame for us now is taxes domestically, not whether or not a foreign country is going to accept an exchange.
When that happened with Kuwait, there wasn't the opportunity for those to go out and buy Kuwaiti dinar, was there? I mean, like there is with the Iraqi dinar. I mean, there weren't Kuwaiti dinar dealers out there peddling it at the time, were there?
Nothing even, as I recall, well, there were, but nothing like what's going on now. I mean, this thing absolutely dwarfs what happened with Kuwait. But I will say this with Kuwait. The Kuwaiti dinar went up over $7, and most of the people, unfortunately, that bought it north of $4, and in a couple of weeks it was down to $3.46. So a lot of people didn't make any money, maybe even lost money.
Okay, so within that 90 days, because of the velocity, did that velocity happen immediately, or did it come over the 90 days?
It happened immediately, and it's really going to happen with the Iraqi dinar. Their speculators are going to do all. It's going to be incredible. I say
it's definitely going to happen with the Iraqi dinar because there's still Iraqi dinar out there to be purchased.
Yeah. But what I'm saying is once this thing happens, don't get cute for two reasons. You're going to lose because the smarter people are going to make money on your loss, and because taxes are going to be due, and you don't want to get hit with an ordinary income tax and 100% penalty, because the ordinary income tax is going to be 39.6%. Add the 5% millionaire surtax, that's 44.6, and then another 44.6 penalty. You've lost 90% of your money because you're playing games. I've been an investment advisor. I've done tax work. I'm an estate planner. I'm not playing games. I'm going to the bank. I'm going to exchange my currency, and I'm not going to see what it's worth tomorrow.
Okay, so my question is, when it does revalue, would it be wise to wait? And I heard what you said, but would it be wise to wait maybe a week or two to see what the velocity does and try to catch that? Okay.
Well, let's say it happens. Let's say it happens again on March 24th. One of the taxes due April 15th. I'm not wasting a day. I can't afford to do that.
Okay.
I have to have that exchange. The money goes into the bank. The money has to be available for me to pay an ordinary income tax. And let's say I just get $1 for it. It's $10 million. That bank's as a matter of fact, I'll say to the bank, hey, taxes are due on April 15th. I want in writing, if I do my exchange at this bank, that money, 100 cents on the dollar, is going to be available on such and such a date, because I'm not going to get killed on the back end because you're jerking around with my float.
That's the other thing. If you do exchange 10 million dinar, are they going to hold our money?
That's why I said it's part of the negotiation, liquidity. Well, first of all, there are banking rules about liquidity. Okay, so they just can't do that. Now, they could give you a 21-day hold on the deposit slip, but these are once the dinar hits the Forex, we'll be dealing with that in our discussions. But that's one of the things the banks will do. They'll just give you a deposit slip. Do not walk out of the bank with a deposit slip with a 21-day hold, on March 24th if taxes are due on April 15th. And if they were to, that would be, they're banks. They do whatever they want. I could give you banks.
If you cash your dinar in, let's say it's $2, so you got $20 million, okay? Does the bank verify that you have that much money available or in the bank, so that if Velocity takes it back to $1, you're still in at $2 per dinar?
No. If you've exchanged it, you're out of the game. The velocity is irrelevant. What the bank needs to understand is you're sitting there and you're saying it's March 24th. Okay. Taxes on the gain are due on April 15th. I'm not going to exchange my money unless I have something in writing from you that this money is available to me on, let's say, April 10th. It's completely liquid. If you're going to have to play. You're the one holding the cards. You don't have to exchange with them.
Basically, you're saying if they're holding your money past the date those taxes are due, you're in trouble, and it's your responsibility.
But if they have held that money beyond what they should legally, even though because of my ignorance I allowed it, I'm still going to sue them because of the damage that's done. They're going to go to the court and say, well, we're working the float, and I'm going to go there and say, my God, I go to that bank, I do the exchange, all I want to do is pay my taxes, and I can't because they're making money on the float. So they want to have that argument, fine.
Okay.
I'll hit them for trouble damages.
That answers my question. Thanks for your time, Jim.
Sure. Okay. Take care.
You too.
Let's see if there's anyone else here I missed. I probably have. I'm trying to see. Nope. I think I've discussed everything with everyone. So it's been a long call today. Hopefully it's because we're near the end. Again, thanks for taking the time to listen to the call. The people that had some questions, I will be calling. Take a little break, but I'll get back on the phone and return your calls. Again, if you're interested in our trust package, time is really short. You can contact us by email or phone. Our email address is trusts with an S, unlimited LLC at gmail.com. Our phone service is 307-274-4122. We'll get the package out to you right away. Our next call is scheduled for next Wednesday. Certainly, if something of dramatic nature were to happen between now and then, we'll try to get out an emergency email and schedule an emergency conference call. Failing that, we'll be back next Wednesday, noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific. Thanks for listening, everyone. Keep your fingers crossed and have a great week. Bye-bye now.